Hello, everybody. Today I am sitting down with Nicholas Spargo, lead designer of Melancholy Republic. How you doing, Nicholas?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks for having a chat with me.
Oh, my pleasure. For those who don't know, what is Melancholy Republic?
So, Melancholy Republic is a story-driven adventure about a politician trying to change her city-state into a better place. It's a JRPG-inspired game in terms of its art style, and it is also about exploring and about tragic and sad stories.
What inspired Melancholy Republic? Because it's a JRPG, but as you've said, there's no combat to it on your Kickstarter page, but there's going to be some mini games and additional stuff, but mainly it's focused on the political drama and main narrative choices.
Yeah. So the way it worked is, personally, I'm a huge JRPG fan. So Final Fantasy is really in my blood, and JRPG games, I've collected them for years. So anything I would make would always be inspired by JRPGs, and it's certainly the art style and the world and the character designs are very inspired by JRPG games and some of the classic ones that I've played personally. Um, However, the actual game itself is a very different beast. It's not just a copy of a JRPG. It's not just a JRPG made by someone who's not in Japan, and I never wanted to be that. It's a cinematic story game. If anything, a big influence of mine was also an indie game called To the Moon, which is all about this cast of characters telling a very heartfelt story. So in many ways, I think in the simplest way you can imagine it, it's like inspired from these JRPG games, but it's also inspired from To the Moon in terms of what the type of game it is. In terms of the story, it's inspired by lots of particular favorite games of mine, and also films in particular, which I don't think have translated well into games very well. So quite tragic and sad storylines have never really translated into games much.
Nah,
And
they
I
really do have a lot of problems with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, in recent years, there's been a bit of an improvement. I think there's a lot of acclaim for The Last of Us for its story and the way it ends, and also Into the Moon, which was also quite, I felt, a very melancholy story. It's a very heartfelt story, not necessarily sad, not necessarily happy, but it definitely showed this kind of storyline and characters, which was never really done before. Too many games have a kind of cliche way and kind of
Yeah.
cliche endings and happy endings, and I wanted to create something uh, very different. And I think our industry is big enough to have room for these kind of new experiences and different experiences, and I want to engage people in a different way. And I thought it was an interesting and certainly unique way to try and tell a story, because tragedies are a huge part of our history, and they're not so much anymore. There's a few directors who like to do kind of tragic stories, but yeah, certainly the kind of angle that I was going down. So quite a few inspirations. It's definitely a unique beast, I think.
Oh yeah, especially when you're saying, about how the industry does go for very cliche stuff. If it's not everything is happy, then it's like the world is dead.
Yeah,
Everything
exactly.
is dead. We never get any middle ground, so that's a very interesting approach to take about it. That's going to be something. It's going to be interesting to see how audiences actually respond to that in a game. Because yeah, the only game I can think of where it actually tried to handle tragedy and just make it be tragic, not end of the world nor end happily, would be like Spec Ops: The Line or maybe
Yeah,
the Metro series.
but and I found those more to be like a critique on warfare and
Oh yeah,
uh,
Spec Ops definitely was also a critique on warfare. Yeah.
yeah. And I don't think it's unfair to say that Melancholy Republic, to a degree, would be a critique on society, religion. And these are big influences as well, because a lot of suffering that happens in society is because of the policies and structures in place in it. So yeah, I mean that could also be possible highlight.
Specifically cite religion. Do you mind my asking why?
Um, Solely because I think religion is often neglected in games. It's not a topic people like to talk about because it's controversial. There's obviously lots of people who are very religious, or people who are very not religious. But one thing that is very much true in our history, and I would imagine in any fantasy history, would be religion would always play a big part, whether it be in people's beliefs. Their character can be defined by their religion, but also lots of suffering can come about from religion, religious hate, or and there's also good stories to be told in religion as well. And I don't want to draw a line and tell a story about this is right or this is wrong, but I think it would be false to just ignore the issue of religion, and the kind of suffering it can cause, and possibly some of the good it can cause as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that because I don't know if you actually saw, but some of the pieces I've written about actually are about trying to find religion in games. So I'm very glad to hear that you're actually addressing the topic.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not like I don't want it to be the sole topic. I don't,
Oh,
it's
no,
not
no.
focus. But like I said, all society and all history is definitely religion plays a part. Yeah, so it would definitely be a part of the story.
I look forward to that. All right. Now, how are you managing to keep the gameplay balanced and there's the world balanced and interesting without all that grinding and everything? Because you have to make without the grinding, because as has been said, most of Final Fantasy VII, for instance, could be completed in like, a couple hours if it weren't for the combat mechanics and the grinding. So, how are you dealing with the lack of that, the void of combat and grinding, instead of just being mini games and making narrative choices?
Yeah, it's definitely a very valid point, and I think without having combat in the game, you definitely have to give the player different mechanics in order to work around with. And the things like player choice being one of them, and in other words, you're not just watching cutscenes, and I think that's important because player choice it definitely. I love having a bit of degree of my own input into characters. So that is yeah, like one of the gameplay mechanics. These kind of mini games as well. Yeah, they are limited and they do offer a break in the plot, and it's all about pacing the game as well. So having these little events that take place every now and then is also good. But the major kind of hole in the game where players can spend time is the exploration. So the game is particular in that it's not a very gameplay heavy game because it is a game which is similar to something like To the Moon. It's a cinematic experience. It is a story. It is an interactive story in a way. However, I felt as a negative in To the Moon, and games which are a bit too story heavy, is that yeah, I mean it can be a bit too much story, and it is a game at the end of the day. And one of the more enjoyable things I have from JRPG games, which I love, is exploring. And I think a lot of people really like exploring. And I really wanted to create this kind of rich, beautiful city that people can explore. There's so many games where you come to that. I mean, think of a game like Final Fantasy VII. You come to a town, and your actual exploration of that town or village is limited to a few minutes because there's only a few maps, areas that you can explore because it
Yeah.
only gives you a little slice, and then it's like yeah, buy your items, buy your armor, and you're out in the field and go do another 2 hours of grinding or boss battles. And some people love the grinding and boss battles, and that's absolutely fine. But Melancholy Republic is really a game for the people who enjoy the exploration and the characters and the story. And I think there's quite a few people out there who enjoy that. And I think people even who like a bit of both, who love the combat and who love the story, will still find lots to love in Melancholy Republic because there is a tremendous amount of exploration, little hidden secrets that are going to be hidden throughout the game. Beyond just the main story quest, there are lots of characters that have their own little problems which you can engage with. So you can just go down the main story and not worry too much about finding those characters and talking to them and helping them out with their little kind of sometimes comedic, sometimes also quite sad stories. And you can just stick to the main one. But yeah, the main idea is exploration and really enjoying and savoring and getting involved with this large, beautiful, highly detailed city that we want to create. A city built with like real love.
Now, you say that, and also on your Kickstarter page, you mentioned that the game is going to be telling its story in something of a chapter structure. Are you going to be going for more of an episodic approach, like Telltale, or more of a quasi-open hub world style navigation, something more akin to certain JRPGs like Persona and or Dragon Age 2, where it specifically focused on one city region and reused certain areas over again, expanding and evolving them over time throughout the story?
Yeah, it's definitely similar to that. It's Dragon Age 2 was I guess an idea, an influence in terms of how to structure the game in terms of its map. Although Dragon Age 2 was, had the kind of problems with the repetitive dungeon nature of it.
Yeah.
But ours doesn't have a dungeon nature. It's more focused on the characters and
Yeah.
the story. Um,
So problem solved.
yeah, but yeah, so it is quite similar. The game, it doesn't open up everything straight away. It is, the kind of central hub area is your office, the parliament, the city, and there are like other areas that open up with certain chapters. Some areas just don't make sense to go at the start, and then yeah, so the game does open up a lot. But it is quite a large city. It's not a small kind of hub kind of center. I think of Persona, is great in terms of, yeah, you explore one city, but is really limited. I mean, there's only a few maps for you to explore. I mean, you've got your school, a few levels in the school, town, a couple of areas in the town, and it's with a mall, and there's not really terribly much interaction or scale to it. So Melancholy Republic is definitely gives the player more options because it's much larger. I mean, they've got kind of rich areas, industrial areas, sewers, slum areas, the parliament itself, lots of indoor areas as well. So it's a real focus on the city and trying to make it feel as live as possible by giving all those areas that people would expect to be there.
And branching off of that, how will the player's choices impact the world? I mean, once again, are we going to be going for a more telltale style of your choices color the experience? Or are we going to see something more akin to The Witcher 2, where serious changes will happen in later acts in the game, depending on your choices?
So it's an interesting problem because I think it's really nice offering options which can have huge changes to the story. But I think with a small game, with a small team, and with a focus on the quality, with Melancholy Republic making the decision that the story itself, the actual main part of the story, the main consequences and the outcomes aren't affected by choices. And I think that is it's a real big positive for the quality and keeping the kind of cinematic experience, that story really focused and tight, and making sure that people can experience the same kind of story. But choice is really important. So in games like, I remember, Final Fantasy VII again as an example, there's lots of choice in it, and that choice often has smaller changes. So, for example, Final Fantasy VII, you could choose who you fall in love with, and you end up with a different cutscene with a different character you fall in love with. And in Melancholy Republic, often your choice can have different outcomes to some of the chapters in terms of characters, what they say to you, or how people may perceive you in certain outcomes. As well as that, there is a romance in the story, and I don't want that romance to be overly forced. So there is a player choice in terms of how they interact with the character that Claire falls in love with. So you can choose to fall in love with her as Claire, or you can choose not to. I think that's a player choice that I really wanted to bring in there, because I don't particularly like just forcing, oh, you will love this character. Um,
Yeah.
and especially because I think it makes sense, because it is a bit of an ambiguous love story. So people can push it more if they want and hint at it more if they want in the story, or they can push away from it. So it's up to them.
A bit like Juani in KOTOR 1.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right. In your trailer, you actually featured right at the end some light 2D animation. Are we going to see more of that?
Uh, we we definitely love that animation, and it's definitely something I'm really looking into doing. Uh, it does depend on kind of budget in terms of how Kickstarter does.
Yeah.
Initially, it was if we did our Kickstarter and we exceeded it, one of the goals was to add those kind of animation parts as like little, how in your JRPGs you get those CG cutscenes, and I wanted to get a bit of that animation style into certain parts of the story. Yeah, so it was definitely something I'd love to do, but it would depend on our final result because it is it's not the cheapest process. And the people
Oh
we
yeah.
got doing that were really decent and really affordable and worked well with us. But still, yeah, it is a monetary problem.
All right. Well, bear that in mind, people. They got a Kickstarter going right now as of this posting. Be sure to check it out. how do you plan on hooking gamers who aren't fans of JRPGs? Because as I told you before we started this, outside of Persona 2 and Persona 3, I've never really gotten into JRPGs, and yet you've still got me a bit interested, but I'm really curious how you're going to try to get more people to try Melancholy Republic.
Uh, oh, yeah, I think for me, I think a lot of JRPG fans, the game will resonate with quick, and they will get the idea and the concept and the world. And so it is a focus for me at the start. I want people who understand it to jump on board. Um, but I think I look again to the moon. I think that had a really large reach outside of any RPG focus. I mean, it is a game inspired from RPGs. At the end of the day, it's built on RPG Maker, um, and Freebird Games. They like RPG games. The developer themselves. And that resonated with the larger audience. And I think that's because it told a story. I think Melancholy Republic is unique in that it's not just a clone of a JRPG. I think as the game comes about to its release and more of the story trailer comes out and people see the story and they become intrigued with these characters and this tragedy that unfolds, I definitely think that that's something that people will be interested in because I mean I've had people already who've seen it who say I'm not a JRPG fan and I am really interested in the game because it is different and I think people who like different experiences, like different indie games, who want something new, who are tired of the kind of same old stories and games, I think this is the kind of game that was really going to appeal to them.
Mhm. Indeed. Indeed. Also, you say on your Kickstarter that you are the primary developer of Melancholy Republic. You've been the most focused. You've had some freelance and some volunteers to help you, but you are the primary guy in charge of developing everything. So, how have you handled that? Because you must not sleep, because this is a very work-intensive game. Lots of writing and lots of art assets. Because before getting into game journalism, I worked on a few indie games and stuff like this, and one of the projects I got to toy around with was an RPG in pre-production, and just even at that stage, it's insane. How did you manage balancing it all?
Um, yeah, like you said, you just don't sleep. You work a lot of hours, but if you love something, I think it's easier. And I really love the idea of Melancholy Republic. And I believed in it enough that I left my previous job and I wanted to work on it. I wanted to make it a reality because I do think it's something that should exist, and I think it's something that people should play because I the story I've written for it is really special to me, and I really want to tell it through the medium of games, through this interactive experience. So it is a lot of work. However, we do use a really easy to use engine. We use RPG Maker, and that was a choice of the fact that there's no ways I wanted to get into making our own engine. So people, some friends said, "Oh yeah, you should make your own engine." And I was just like, "Okay, is it easy?" And they were like, "Well, you've got to spend 3 years learning C++, but
Yeah, yeah, nah. Making your
uh,
own engine, that's
yeah." So at the end of the day, it does everything I need it to do, and RPG Maker makes a lot of things really simple and streamlined. It is really limiting in terms of it's hard to port it. But at the moment, I just want to focus on making this PC game. The technique we use for it is not, we don't just use RPG Maker's assets. We don't just use builder maps in game. All the maps are built in Photoshop and they're layered to create.
oh, very nice.
It's called parallax mapping, which they do in RPG Maker. So a lot of the maps that you've seen in the trailer, a lot of those maps have upwards of 1,000 layers. So a
Wow.
thousand different art assets that have been built onto them. Yeah, so they're a lot of they're handcrafted. There's buildings, they're just wall textures with windows thrown on them, with beams and platforms. They are
You really don't sleep.
every map is in a way is a picture. It's a piece of art that the player can explore. And I really wanted that kind of feeling of this game is made with love. All this map, all our lighting, all our shading, it's hand painted on with brushes. So it's not we're not using kind of any effect tricks.
It's impressive. It's insane imagining 1,000 layers. Ay.
Yeah, I mean, like I've had some help as well, so which is good. We've got some other skilled mappers, but yeah, like you said, I've done most of the work so far, and that's a large reason why I want to get the Kickstarter going, and I want to get the game funded so I can bring more talented people who I have in mind to work on the game, so we can yeah, get it out within our release frame.
Yes. All right. Well, we have some time left, so at the end of all of my interviews, I like to let my interviewee ask me a question. Do you have a question for me and or my audience? You can also ask my audience a question.
Yeah, I would like to ask the audience, out of our four main characters, which have been shown in the game so far, which is Marianne Dornmark, Claire Lockridge, Cyrus Anagar, or Anna Mirabel. Out of those four characters, which one do you find the most intriguing with their backstory, and which one are you most interested to see their story unfold in our game?
All right. Please be sure to let us know in the comments below, guys. I'll be letting Nick know what you choose. And I gotta speak for myself. The Armored Princess is the most intriguing for me because I absolutely love that armor design and the backstory for her. I really expect something interesting to be playing out from her.
Certainly will be a very interesting story. I promise you that.
All right, Nick. Thank you for taking your time to talk to me today. And for all of you interested in Melancholy Republic, there will be a link below and an annotation below my finger, which I will hold up here for longer so I can actually keep the annotation for there longer than a second. And you can look it up. And if you feel so interested, feel free to throw a little behind the Kickstarter. How much have you got raised as of yet?
So far, we're just over
Very
£2,500.
nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we really appreciate our backing so far, and we're really going to keep on pushing right up to the end, and hopefully we'll get this funded and bring out the story of Melancholy Republic to share with people. So thank you very much for this interview, and thank you to anyone who's watched and who likes the game so far.
An elegant weapon for a more civilized time, huh? Well, guess what? Times have changed.
You see, by most respects, Wet shouldn't be as good or entertaining a game as it is. The graphics are cheaply put together, the levels are just a bunch of linear halls connecting large combat arenas over and over, and the story is atrociously dumb. Yet even in these respects, I just keep wondering if it was intentional or not.